The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Prince William sat at his wooden desk. Papers were scattered everywhere, showing his busy schedule for the week. He had 3 charity events to attend and 2 important meetings with government officials. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he was too focused on his work to notice. Outside in the palace gardens, Kate was playing with their 3 children. Little Louis was chasing butterflies, while Charlotte picked flowers for her mother. Prince George was reading a book under the big oak tree that had been there for over 200 years. Kate smiled as she watched them play. These quiet family moments were precious to her because their public life was always so busy and stressful. The phone on William's desk rang loudly, breaking the peaceful silence of his study. He looked at the caller ID and saw it was his private secretary, James Morrison. This was unusual because James never called during family time unless something very important had happened. William felt his stomach tighten with worry as he picked up the phone. James sounded different when he spoke. His voice was shaky, and William had never heard him sound so upset before. James had been working for the royal family for 15 years, and he was always calm and professional. Today something was clearly very wrong. "Mrs. Henderson needs to see you urgently," James said without his usual polite greetings. "She has been with your family for 30 years, and she has never asked for anything before. Today she came to my office crying, and she could barely speak. Something terrible has happened to her family." William put down his pen and listened carefully. Mrs. Henderson was not just any staff member. She had been like a grandmother to him during his difficult teenage years. When his mother, Princess Diana, died, William had felt lost and angry at the world. Mrs. Henderson had quietly taken care of him without making him feel like he was being watched or pitied. She would leave his favorite sandwiches outside his bedroom door when he refused to come down for dinner. She never said anything about his red eyes after he had been crying. She just made sure he had clean clothes and that someone cared about him even when he felt completely alone in the world. Kate noticed William through the window and saw his face change as he talked on the phone. She knew that look. It was the same expression he got whenever he received bad news about people he cared about. She quietly told the children to keep playing and moved closer to the window to watch her husband. Mrs. Henderson had also been incredibly kind to Kate when she first joined the royal family. Everything had been so overwhelming back then. The media criticized everything she wore and every word she spoke. People compared her to Princess Diana constantly, and she felt like she could never be good enough. Mrs. Henderson had taught Kate small things that made a huge difference. She showed her how to hold her hands during ceremonies so she would look confident. She explained which fork to use at formal dinners and how to walk gracefully in long dresses. Most importantly, she listened when Kate felt homesick and missed her normal life. William asked James what exactly had happened to Mrs. Henderson. James explained that her grandson Tommy was very sick. Tommy was only 8 years old, and he was the only family Mrs. Henderson had left. Her son had died in a car accident 5 years ago, and her daughter-in-law could not cope with raising Tommy alone. She had left him with Mrs. Henderson and disappeared. The doctor said Tommy needed expensive treatment that would cost thousands of pounds. Mrs. Henderson had spent all her savings trying to help him, but it was not enough. She was too proud to ask the royal family for money, but she was desperate and scared that Tommy might die without proper medical care. William felt his heart break as he listened. He thought about his own children playing happily in the garden and imagined how he would feel if one of them was seriously ill. Mrs. Henderson had given so much love and care to his family over the years. Now she needed help, and he was determined to find a way to save her grandson. The phone call ended and William sat in silence, staring out at his family. He knew this was going to be much more complicated than just writing a check. Royal protocol had strict rules about helping staff members personally. The media would create a scandal if they found out. But William also knew he could not let Mrs. Henderson face this tragedy alone. Kate saw William end the call and noticed he was sitting very still. She recognized this behavior from their years of marriage. Her husband was thinking deeply about a serious problem, and trying to figure out the best solution. She gathered the children and decided to go inside to find out what was wrong. As Kate walked toward the palace, she had no idea that this phone call would change everything for their family. The next few weeks would test their ability to help someone they loved, while keeping their actions secret from the world. Behind palace walls, they were about to begin a mission that would touch their hearts in ways they never expected. Kate walked through the palace corridors with her children following behind her like little ducklings. The marble floors echoed with their footsteps, and Louis giggled as he tried to slide on the smooth surface. Charlotte was still holding the flowers she had picked, and George carried his book under his arm. Kate smiled at them, but her mind was focused on William and the worry she had seen on his face. She found William still sitting at his desk, staring out the window. His papers were forgotten, and his coffee cup sat empty beside his computer. Kate had seen this look before during difficult times in their marriage. It was the expression he wore when he was trying to protect people he loved, but felt powerless to help them. The children ran to their father and climbed onto his lap. William hugged them tightly, and Kate noticed his eyes were slightly red. She sent the children to play in the next room and closed the door behind them. Then she sat down across from her husband and waited for him to explain what had upset him so much. William told Kate everything about Mrs. Henderson and her grandson Tommy. As he spoke, Kate felt her own eyes fill with tears. She remembered so many moments when Mrs. Henderson had been there for her during the hardest times of adjusting to royal life. The older woman had never made Kate feel stupid for not knowing royal protocols or for missing her normal life before marriage. When Kate was pregnant with George, she had been terrified about becoming a mother in the public eye. Every detail of her pregnancy was reported in newspapers and magazines. People criticized her weight gain and speculated about the baby's health. Mrs. Henderson had been the one person who treated her pregnancy as something beautiful and natural instead of a media event. Mrs. Henderson would bring Kate special tea when she felt sick in the mornings. She knew exactly which crackers helped with nausea, and she never asked questions when Kate cried from exhaustion and stress. During those long months, Mrs. Henderson became like the mother Kate needed, but could not ask her own mother to be because of royal protocol. After George was born, Kate felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising a future king. The media watched every decision she made about his care and education. Mrs. Henderson taught Kate how to trust her own instincts as a mother. She showed her that love was more important than following every rule perfectly. When Charlotte was born 2 years later, Mrs. Henderson was there again, with the same gentle support. She helped Kate manage 2 small children while maintaining her royal duties. Mrs. Henderson never complained about working late or helping with midnight feedings when Kate was exhausted from public appearances during the day. During Louis's birth, Mrs. Henderson had been recovering from her own surgery, but she still insisted on helping Kate prepare the nursery. She worked slowly because she was still healing, but she wanted everything to be perfect for the new baby. Kate had told her to rest and recover, but Mrs. Henderson said the royal children were like her own grandchildren, and she wanted to welcome Louis properly. William remembered different moments with Mrs. Henderson that were equally special to him. After his mother died, he had become angry and rebellious. He would skip royal engagements and refuse to follow protocols that seemed meaningless to him. Mrs. Henderson never lectured him or reported his behavior to his father or grandmother. Instead, she would find him hiding in different parts of the palace and sit quietly beside him. Sometimes she would bring him food or a book she thought he might enjoy. Other times she would just sit in comfortable silence until he was ready to talk about his feelings. She never made him feel guilty for grieving or for being angry about his mother's death. When William started dating Kate seriously, Mrs. Henderson was one of the first people to welcome her warmly. She could see that Kate made William happy in a way he had not been since his mother died. Mrs. Henderson made sure Kate felt comfortable in the palace and taught her small details that helped her fit in with royal life. Now this woman who had given so much love and support to their family was facing the worst crisis of her life. Her grandson Tommy was seriously ill, and she could not afford the medical treatment he needed. William and Kate both knew they had to help her, but they also understood how complicated this situation would become. Royal finances were carefully monitored, and any unusual expenses would be questioned by palace officials and government accountants. The media would create a scandal if they discovered the royal family was using public money to help a staff member's personal problems. Even though Mrs. Henderson deserved their help, the political consequences could be severe. Kate took William's hand and looked directly into his eyes. She told him they would find a way to help Mrs. Henderson and Tommy no matter what obstacles they faced. Some things were more important than royal protocol, and this was definitely one of those situations. They had been blessed with wealth and privilege, and now they had the chance to use those advantages to save a child's life. William squeezed Kate's hand and felt grateful to have married someone who understood the importance of loyalty and compassion. Together, they would figure out how to help Mrs. Henderson without creating problems for the royal family. The solution would not be easy to find, but they were determined to try everything possible. Outside the study door, they could hear their children playing and laughing. The sound reminded them both how precious family relationships were and how important it was to protect the people who had shown them unconditional love and support over the years. That evening, William and Kate sat in their private living room after putting the children to bed. The palace felt unusually quiet, and both of them were lost in their own thoughts about Mrs. Henderson's terrible situation. William kept thinking about little Tommy lying in a hospital bed, while his grandmother worried about paying for his treatment. Kate stared at the fireplace, wondering how they could help without breaking royal rules. William had grown up knowing that being a prince came with many restrictions. Every decision he made was watched by the media and criticized by politicians. Even his charity work had to be approved by palace officials who worried about political implications. Now he faced a situation where doing the right thing could create serious problems for his family and the monarchy. The palace accountants kept detailed records of every penny spent from royal budgets. If William used official funds to help Mrs. Henderson, the media would discover it within days. Newspaper headlines would scream about royal waste and misuse of taxpayer money. Opposition politicians would demand investigations, and the scandal could damage the monarchy's reputation for years. Kate understood these complications, but she also knew they could not abandon Mrs. Henderson. The older woman had worked for the royal family for 30 years without ever asking for personal favors. She had given her whole adult life to serving others, and now she needed help desperately. Kate felt sick thinking about Mrs. Henderson staying awake at night worrying about her grandson's health. William called his private secretary, James Morrison, to discuss possible solutions. James explained that royal protocol strictly forbade using official funds for staff members' personal problems. Even the most generous interpretation of the rules would not allow direct financial assistance to Mrs. Henderson. The palace lawyers had already reviewed the situation, and their advice was clear. Any help would have to come from William and Kate's personal resources. The problem was that William and Kate's personal finances were also monitored closely. Large withdrawals or unusual spending patterns would be noticed by palace officials and government accountants. The media had contacts everywhere who reported on royal family activities. Even private charitable donations were often discovered and reported in newspapers. Kate suggested they could ask wealthy friends for help, but William worried about involving other people in their secret mission. Every person who knew about their plan increased the risk of media discovery. Royal scandals spread quickly through London society, and even trusted friends sometimes shared information they should keep private. They spent hours discussing different approaches, and each idea seemed to create new problems. William felt frustrated because his wealth and status should make it easy to help one sick child. Instead, the very privileges that gave him power also created barriers that prevented him from acting quickly and directly. Kate began to cry as she thought about Mrs. Henderson's desperation. The proud woman had probably spent weeks trying to solve her problems alone before finally asking for help. Now she was waiting anxiously for William and Kate to respond, while her grandson's condition might be getting worse every day. William held Kate as she sobbed and felt his own emotions overwhelming him. They had everything anyone could want in life, but they felt powerless to help someone who had shown them such kindness and loyalty. The weight of royal duty had never felt heavier than it did in that moment. Kate wiped her tears and looked at William with determination in her eyes. She told him they would find a way to help Mrs. Henderson, no matter what rules they had to bend or what risks they had to take. Some situations were more important than protocol, and this was definitely one of them. William agreed but pointed out they needed to be very careful about their approach. One mistake could create a scandal that would hurt not only their family, but also Mrs. Henderson herself. The media would make her life miserable if they discovered she had accepted money from the royal family. She could lose her job, and her reputation would be destroyed. They decided to spend the next few days researching different options and consulting with trusted advisors who could help them navigate the legal and political complications. William would contact some of his oldest friends who had become successful businessmen. Kate would reach out to charity organizations she had worked with over the years. The most important thing was maintaining complete secrecy while they developed their plan. They could not discuss the situation with anyone except the few people whose help they absolutely needed. Even their closest family members could not know what they were planning because too many people already knew about Mrs. Henderson's problems. Late that night, William and Kate lay in bed unable to sleep. Both of them kept thinking about Mrs. Henderson sitting beside Tommy's hospital bed, wondering if the royal family would help her or abandon her in her time of greatest need. They had made a commitment to find a solution, but they had no idea how difficult and dangerous their mission would become. William stared at the ceiling, thinking about his mother, Princess Diana, and how she had always helped people in need regardless of royal protocol. Diana had visited AIDS patients when other royals were afraid to touch them. She had walked through minefields to bring attention to humanitarian causes. She had shown William that being royal meant using privilege to help others, not just enjoying the benefits of wealth and status. Kate thought about her own parents who had taught her the importance of loyalty and kindness. They had raised her to believe that people who showed you love and support deserved the same treatment in return. Mrs. Henderson had been like family to them, and families took care of each other during difficult times. As dawn approached, William and Kate finally fell asleep holding hands and dreaming about the day when they could tell Mrs. Henderson that Tommy would receive the medical treatment he needed. They had no idea yet how they would make that dream come true, but they were determined to find a way. The next morning, William woke up early and went to his private office before anyone else in the palace was awake. He needed to make some very important phone calls without anyone overhearing his conversations. The hallways were dark and quiet as he walked through the palace, carrying only his personal mobile phone and a cup of coffee. William's first call was to his old school friend Marcus Thompson, who had become a successful investment banker in London. Marcus and William had been roommates at university, and they had remained close friends despite their very different careers. William trusted Marcus completely and knew he would keep any conversation private. Marcus was surprised to receive such an early morning call, but he could hear the urgency in William's voice. William explained the situation carefully without mentioning Mrs. Henderson's name or giving too many details. He asked if Marcus knew any wealthy people who might be willing to make anonymous donations to help a sick child receive medical treatment. Marcus immediately offered to help and said he knew several millionaire clients who regularly made charitable donations. The key would be setting up the payments through foundations and trusts that could keep the donors' identities completely secret. Marcus promised to research the best legal methods for anonymous giving and would call William back within 24 hours. Meanwhile, Kate was making her own secret plans. She had arranged to meet with Sarah Collins, who ran a children's medical charity that Kate had supported for several years. They met at a small coffee shop far from central London, where no one would recognize Kate if she wore simple clothes and a hat to disguise her appearance. Sarah was shocked when Kate explained why they were meeting. Kate had always been professional and distant during their previous charity work together. Today, Kate seemed desperate and emotional as she described a sick child who needed expensive medical treatment. Kate asked if Sarah's charity could help pay for the treatment without revealing where the money had come from. Sarah explained that her charity had strict rules about how they distributed money and they normally required detailed applications and medical reports before approving any payments. However, she could see that Kate was genuinely distressed about this situation. Sarah agreed to research whether there were any emergency procedures that might allow faster approval for urgent medical cases. Back at the palace, William was researching private hospitals and medical specialists who treated children with serious illnesses. He spent hours reading medical websites and making notes about different treatment options and costs. The more he learned, the more worried he became about Tommy's condition and the expense of proper medical care. Kate returned from her meeting with Sarah feeling slightly more hopeful, but still anxious about the many obstacles they faced. She found William in his office surrounded by medical research papers and looking overwhelmed by the complexity of their situation. They sat together and shared what they had learned from their morning meetings. William told Kate about Marcus's offer to help arrange anonymous donations through his wealthy clients. Kate explained Sarah's willingness to consider emergency funding through her medical charity. Both approaches had potential, but they would require careful coordination and perfect timing to work successfully. The biggest challenge was maintaining secrecy while involving so many different people in their plan. Marcus would need to contact potential donors without explaining exactly why the money was needed. Sarah would have to bend her charity's normal procedures without understanding the full situation. Every new person who became involved increased the risk of information leaking to the media. William and Kate decided they needed to visit Mrs. Henderson as soon as possible to get more details about Tommy's medical condition. They also wanted to reassure her that they were working on solutions, even though they could not explain their specific plans yet. The visit would have to be arranged very carefully to avoid attracting attention from palace staff or security officers. Kate suggested they could visit Mrs. Henderson at her home during the evening when fewer people would notice their absence from the palace. They would need to travel without their usual security escort and wear ordinary clothes to avoid recognition. William was nervous about the security risks, but he agreed the visit was necessary. They spent the afternoon developing a detailed plan for their secret visit to Mrs. Henderson's flat. Kate would tell the palace staff she was going to bed early with a headache. William would claim he needed to work late in his private office. They would meet in the palace garage and drive Kate's personal car, which was not normally associated with official royal activities. The drive to Mrs. Henderson's neighborhood would take about 40 minutes through London traffic. They planned to stay for only 30 minutes to minimize the risk of being discovered away from the palace. William worried about what they would find when they arrived at Mrs. Henderson's home, and whether Tommy's condition had gotten worse since they first heard about his illness. As evening approached, William and Kate felt nervous and excited about their secret mission. They had never done anything like this before, and they were not sure how Mrs. Henderson would react to seeing them at her door. They also worried about being recognized by neighbors or passers-by who might report their visit to newspapers. Kate chose simple dark clothes and tied her hair back in a plain ponytail. William wore an old jacket and baseball cap that he hoped would make him look like an ordinary person. They felt strange dressing so casually after years of wearing formal clothes for public appearances. Before leaving the palace, they checked on their sleeping children and felt guilty about the secrets they were keeping from their family. However, they also felt proud that they were taking action to help someone who had shown them so much kindness over the years. This mission felt more important than any official royal duty they had ever performed. William started Kate's car, and they drove quietly out of the palace grounds into the busy London streets. Neither of them spoke much during the drive, because they were both thinking about what they might discover at Mrs. Henderson's home. They had committed themselves to helping her and Tommy, but they still had no idea whether their secret plans would be successful. The city lights blurred past their windows as they drove toward a meeting that would change everything for Mrs. Henderson's family and test William and Kate's ability to act with courage and compassion despite the restrictions of royal life. The drive back to Kensington Palace was completely silent. William and Kate were both lost in their own thoughts about everything they had seen at Mrs. Henderson's apartment. The image of Tommy sleeping in that hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment would stay with them forever. They knew they had to act quickly because the little boy's condition could get worse at any moment. When they arrived back at the palace, William immediately went to his private office and started making phone calls. It was late evening, but he knew his friend Marcus Thompson would still be awake because investment bankers often worked until midnight. Marcus answered his phone on the first ring and could hear the urgency in William's voice. William described Tommy's medical condition in more detail and explained that the treatment needed to begin within the next few weeks. Marcus said he had already contacted 3 of his wealthiest clients about making anonymous charitable donations. All 3 had agreed to contribute substantial amounts of money, but they wanted to make sure their donations would be handled through legitimate medical charities. Marcus had also researched the best children's hospitals in London and found 2 facilities that specialized in Tommy's type of illness. Both hospitals had excellent success rates and could provide the surgery and medications Tommy needed. The total cost would be significant, but Marcus's clients were prepared to cover all expenses through their private foundations. While William coordinated the financial arrangements, Kate was working on the medical side of their plan. She had received a return call from Sarah Collins, who ran the children's medical charity. Sarah had spoken with her board of directors about emergency funding procedures, and they had agreed to make an exception for Tommy's case. Sarah explained that her charity could work directly with the hospital to arrange Tommy's treatment and pay all bills immediately. The charity would also coordinate with other medical organizations to ensure Tommy received the best possible care from the most qualified specialists. Sarah said her charity had handled similar emergency cases before, and they knew how to work quickly and efficiently. Kate felt relieved that Sarah's charity could manage the medical arrangements, but she was still worried about maintaining secrecy. Sarah assured her that medical charities dealt with confidential cases regularly, and they had strict procedures for protecting patient privacy. No one outside the medical team would know the source of funding for Tommy's treatment. The next morning, William received another call from Marcus with even better news. Marcus had contacted a 4th wealthy client who wanted to establish a permanent medical fund for children in similar situations. This fund would not only pay for Tommy's immediate treatment, but would also help other sick children whose families could not afford proper medical care. Marcus had arranged for all the donations to be processed through established charitable foundations that specialized in medical assistance. The paperwork would show only that anonymous donors had contributed to help sick children. There would be no connection to the royal family in any of the official documents or financial records. Kate spent the morning researching the 2 hospitals that Marcus had recommended. She read about their medical teams and success rates with Tommy's type of illness. Both hospitals had outstanding reputations, and she felt confident that Tommy would receive excellent care at either facility. She also researched the specific treatments Tommy would need and learned they had very high success rates when started early. William called his private secretary, James Morrison, to arrange another meeting with Mrs. Henderson. William said he had important news to share with her, but he could not discuss the details over the phone. James was curious about the mysterious meetings, but he respected William's privacy and agreed to contact Mrs. Henderson immediately. Mrs. Henderson arrived at the palace within 2 hours, looking nervous and hopeful at the same time. She had spent another sleepless night watching Tommy and worrying about his deteriorating condition. The hospital had called that morning to discuss payment arrangements, and she knew she was running out of time to find solutions. William and Kate met with Mrs. Henderson in a small private sitting room where they could talk without interruption. They explained that they had arranged for anonymous donors to pay for all of Tommy's medical treatment through established medical charities. Tommy would be admitted to one of London's best children's hospitals within the next few days and would receive care from the most qualified specialists available. Mrs. Henderson could not believe what she was hearing. She kept asking if they were certain the arrangements were real and legal. William assured her that everything had been organized through legitimate channels, and there would be no problems with the hospital or medical authorities. The anonymous donors were wealthy philanthropists who regularly supported medical charities and wanted to help children like Tommy. Kate explained that Sarah Collins from the medical charity would contact Mrs. Henderson directly to arrange Tommy's hospital admission and coordinate all aspects of his care. Mrs. Henderson would not need to worry about paperwork or payments because the charity would handle everything. Her only responsibility would be staying with Tommy and supporting him through his treatment. Mrs. Henderson started crying again, but this time her tears were from relief and gratitude rather than fear and desperation. She hugged William and Kate repeatedly and kept thanking them for saving Tommy's life. She said she had prayed every night for a miracle and could not believe her prayers had been answered so quickly and completely. William told Mrs. Henderson she should never thank them because she had given their family far more over the years than they could ever repay. She had been there during their most difficult moments and had shown them unconditional love and support. Helping Tommy was not charity, but rather an act of love between family members who cared about each other deeply. Kate gave Mrs. Henderson her personal phone number and told her to call immediately if she needed anything during Tommy's treatment. Kate also arranged for Mrs. Henderson to take extended leave from her palace duties so she could focus completely on Tommy's recovery. The royal household would continue paying her full salary and would provide additional support if needed. That evening, William and Kate felt exhausted but triumphant as they reflected on everything they had accomplished in just a few days. They had overcome seemingly impossible obstacles through careful planning and the generosity of people who were willing to help anonymously. Most importantly, they had kept their promise to Mrs. Henderson and Tommy without creating any scandal or breaking royal protocols. The next phase of their mission would be ensuring Tommy received the best possible medical care and supporting Mrs. Henderson through what would certainly be a stressful and emotional time. However, the hardest part was over, and they could finally feel hopeful about Tommy's future. 3 weeks had passed since William and Kate first learned about Tommy's illness, and today was the day they had been both anticipating and dreading. Tommy had completed his surgery successfully and was recovering well at the children's hospital. The doctors were optimistic about his chances for a full recovery, but he still needed several more weeks of treatment and observation. Mrs. Henderson had been staying at the hospital around the clock since Tommy was admitted. The medical charity had arranged for a comfortable room where she could sleep near Tommy's ward, and the hospital staff treated her with great kindness and respect. She called Kate every few days to report on Tommy's progress and to express her continued gratitude for everything they had done. William and Kate had been following Tommy's recovery closely, but they had not visited him at the hospital because they were worried about attracting media attention. Hospital staff and other patients might recognize them and report their visits to newspapers. They decided it was safer to wait until Tommy was released before seeing him again. However, today was different because Sarah Collins from the medical charity had called with wonderful news. Tommy was being discharged from the hospital, and the doctors said he was completely cured. The surgery had been successful, and the follow-up treatments had eliminated all traces of his illness. Tommy would need regular checkups for the next few years, but he was expected to live a normal, healthy life. Sarah had also arranged for Tommy and Mrs. Henderson to stay in a comfortable apartment near the hospital for another week while Tommy continued his recovery. After that, they would be able to return home and resume their normal lives. The anonymous donors had provided enough money to cover all their living expenses during this transition period. William and Kate decided they needed to visit Tommy and Mrs. Henderson to celebrate this wonderful news in person. They had shared the worry and fear of the past few weeks, and now they wanted to share the joy of Tommy's recovery. This visit would be different from their previous secret trip because now they were bringing good news instead of trying to figure out how to help. Kate spent the morning shopping for gifts for Tommy. She bought books and games that would help him recover his strength while entertaining him during his continued rest at home. She also bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers for Mrs. Henderson and a card expressing their happiness about Tommy's recovery. William arranged for them to visit the apartment where Tommy and Mrs. Henderson were staying. This location was more private than the hospital, and there would be less risk of unwanted attention from media or curious observers. William also arranged for light security coverage just in case they were recognized during their visit. As they drove through London toward the apartment, William and Kate both felt nervous excitement about seeing Tommy healthy and happy. They had seen him only once before when he was so sick and weak, surrounded by medical equipment. Today they would see him as a normal little boy who could play and laugh and enjoy life. Kate carried the gifts and flowers, while William carried a special present he had chosen personally for Tommy. It was a signed photograph of the whole royal family, including their 3 children, with a personal message wishing Tommy good health and happiness. William hoped Tommy would treasure this gift as a reminder of how many people had been hoping and praying for his recovery. They climbed the stairs to the 3rd-floor apartment, feeling much more optimistic than they had during their previous visit to Mrs. Henderson's home. Today was about celebration and joy rather than crisis and fear. William knocked gently on the apartment door and waited for Mrs. Henderson to answer. When the door opened, Mrs. Henderson looked completely different than she had 3 weeks earlier. Her eyes were bright and clear instead of red from crying. Her hair was neatly styled, and she was wearing a pretty dress instead of the wrinkled clothes she had worn during Tommy's illness. Most importantly, she was smiling with genuine happiness instead of forcing brave expressions to hide her terror. Mrs. Henderson hugged William and Kate warmly and invited them into the small but cheerful apartment. Sunlight streamed through large windows and fresh flowers decorated the living room. The atmosphere was completely different from the darkness and despair they had experienced during Tommy's illness. Tommy was sitting at a small table working on a jigsaw puzzle when William and Kate entered the living room. He looked up with bright, curious eyes and smiled shyly when Mrs. Henderson introduced him to his special visitors. Tommy was still thin from his illness, but his color was good, and he seemed alert and energetic. Kate knelt down beside Tommy's chair and showed him the gifts she had brought. Tommy's face lit up with excitement as he opened each present and discovered the books and games inside. He thanked Kate politely and asked if she would help him with one of the puzzles. Kate agreed immediately and sat down at the table beside him. William presented Tommy with the signed family photograph and explained that his children George, Charlotte, and Louis had all wanted to send their good wishes. Tommy studied the photograph carefully and asked questions about each member of the royal family. He seemed particularly interested in Louis, who was closest to his own age. Mrs. Henderson served tea and biscuits while Tommy showed William and Kate his other presents from hospital staff and charity workers. He had received dozens of cards and gifts from people who had heard about his illness and wanted to wish him well. Tommy seemed amazed that so many strangers cared about his recovery. As they sat together in the sunny apartment, William and Kate felt overwhelmed by the success of their secret mission. Just 3 weeks ago, Tommy had been desperately ill, and Mrs. Henderson had been terrified about losing her only remaining family member. Today, Tommy was healthy and happy, while Mrs. Henderson glowed with relief and gratitude. The moment felt almost magical as they watched Tommy laugh and play like any normal 8-year-old child. All the stress and worry and careful planning of the past few weeks had led to this perfect afternoon of celebration and joy. William and Kate looked at each other and smiled, knowing they had accomplished something truly meaningful. However, they also knew their visit was leading toward an important moment they had been anticipating for weeks. Today, they would finally share the complete truth with Mrs. Henderson about how they had arranged Tommy's medical treatment and why they had been willing to take such risks to help her family. Through her tears, Mrs. Henderson tried to express her gratitude, but William and Kate stopped her gently. They explained that she had already repaid them many times over through years of faithful service and genuine affection. The relationship between their families was based on mutual love and respect, not on favors that needed to be repaid. Kate stood up and walked to the window where she could see children playing in the corridor below. She thought about her own 3 children sleeping safely at Kensington Palace and felt grateful that Tommy would now have the same chance for a happy, healthy childhood. The success of their mission had reminded her of the importance of protecting and nurturing all children, regardless of their social or economic circumstances. William joined Kate at the window and put his arm around her shoulders. They both felt emotionally exhausted but deeply satisfied by everything they had accomplished together. Their secret mission had tested their ability to work as a team while maintaining absolute discretion under enormous pressure. Mrs. Henderson composed herself and thanked William and Kate for trusting her with the complete truth about Tommy's rescue. She promised to keep their involvement private for the rest of her life because she understood the importance of protecting their reputations and the monarchy's stability. The secret would remain between the three of them forever. As the afternoon sun began to set, William and Kate knew their visit was coming to an end. Tommy was sleeping peacefully in his bedroom, completely unaware of the adult conversation taking place in the next room. Tomorrow he would wake up healthy and happy with his whole life ahead of him, thanks to the love and determination of people who had refused to let him suffer. Mrs. Henderson walked William and Kate to the apartment door and hugged them both tightly. She told them this day would remain one of the most precious memories of her entire life. Not only had Tommy recovered completely, but she had also learned the true depth of the royal family's love and commitment to people who served them faithfully. William and Kate left the apartment feeling peaceful and satisfied in a way they had not experienced for many weeks. Their secret mission was complete, and Tommy was safe. Mrs. Henderson knew the truth about their involvement and had promised to protect their privacy. Most importantly, a little boy who had been near death was now healthy and happy with unlimited possibilities for his future. As they drove back to Kensington Palace through the busy London streets, William and Kate reflected on how much their lives had changed over the past few weeks. They had discovered strengths they did not know they possessed, and had learned that true leadership sometimes required breaking rules for the right reasons. The mission had also strengthened their marriage in unexpected ways. Working together under such intense pressure while maintaining absolute secrecy had required complete trust and communication. They had supported each other through moments of doubt and fear, while never losing sight of their shared commitment to helping Mrs. Henderson and Tommy. Kate looked out the car window at families walking together on the sidewalks and felt a new appreciation for the simple blessing of good health. Tommy's illness had reminded her how quickly life could change and how important it was to cherish every moment with the people you love most. William thought about his mother, Princess Diana, and how proud she would have been of their secret mission. Diana had always believed that being royal meant using privilege to help others, especially those who could not help themselves. Tommy's recovery proved that the values Diana had taught William were still relevant and powerful in the modern world. When they arrived at Kensington Palace, their own 3 children were waiting excitedly to hear about their mysterious afternoon outing. William and Kate had told the children they were visiting a sick little boy, but had not explained the full situation. Now they could share the happy news that the little boy was completely healthy and would be going home soon. George, Charlotte, and Louis listened with wide eyes as their parents described Tommy's recovery and Mrs. Henderson's joy. The children asked if they could meet Tommy someday, and William promised to arrange a visit once Tommy was completely settled back at home. He thought Tommy would enjoy meeting other children his age who could become new friends. That evening, as William and Kate tucked their children into bed, they felt grateful for their family's health and happiness. They also felt proud that they had been able to help another family experience the same feelings of security and hope for the future. Their secret mission had reminded them that the most important victories in life often happen quietly behind closed doors, where only love and determination matter. After spending an hour playing games and sharing stories with Tommy, William suggested that he and Kate needed to have a private conversation with Mrs. Henderson. Tommy was getting tired from all the excitement, and Mrs. Henderson agreed he should rest in his bedroom while the adults talked in the living room. Mrs. Henderson tucked Tommy into his bed and read him a short story until he fell asleep peacefully. She closed his bedroom door quietly and returned to the living room, where William and Kate were waiting nervously. They had practiced this conversation many times, but now that the moment had arrived, they felt uncertain about how to begin. Kate took Mrs. Henderson's hands gently and looked into her eyes with deep emotion. She told Mrs. Henderson they needed to explain exactly how they had arranged for Tommy's medical treatment and why they had been so determined to help despite all the obstacles they faced. The truth was more personal and meaningful than Mrs. Henderson realized. William began by reminding Mrs. Henderson of all the ways she had helped their family over the past 15 years. He talked about how she had supported him after his mother died and how she had helped Kate adjust to royal life. He explained that Mrs. Henderson had been present for every important moment in their family's history and had always shown them unconditional love and loyalty. Mrs. Henderson listened quietly with tears beginning to form in her eyes. She had never thought of her work as anything special because caring for the royal family had always felt natural and rewarding to her. She had loved William and Kate's children as if they were her own grandchildren and had found great joy in serving their family through both happy and difficult times. Kate explained that when they learned about Tommy's illness, they immediately knew they had to help regardless of royal protocols or potential consequences. Mrs. Henderson was not just an employee but a cherished member of their extended family. The idea of losing Tommy was unthinkable because it would devastate someone they loved deeply. William described the complicated process of arranging anonymous donations and coordinating with medical charities while maintaining complete secrecy. He explained how they had contacted wealthy friends and charitable organizations to create a funding network that could pay for Tommy's treatment without creating political or media problems for the royal family. Mrs. Henderson was shocked to learn about the extent of William and Kate's efforts on Tommy's behalf. She had assumed the anonymous donors were strangers who had heard about Tommy's situation through the medical charity. She never imagined that William and Kate had personally orchestrated the entire rescue operation while keeping their involvement completely hidden. Kate told Mrs. Henderson the most important truth of all. Helping Tommy had not been a burden or obligation, but rather a privilege and honor. Mrs. Henderson had given their family so much love and support over the years that saving Tommy's life felt like a small repayment for everything she had done for them. William added that their secret mission had reminded them why they had chosen lives of public service in the first place. Being royal meant using their privileges and resources to help people in need, especially those who had shown them kindness and loyalty. Tommy's recovery represented everything good about their ability to make positive differences in people's lives. Mrs. Henderson began crying as she fully understood the depth of William and Kate's commitment to her family. She realized they had risked media scandals and political criticism to save a child they barely knew simply because they loved her and wanted to ease her suffering. The generosity and courage of their actions overwhelmed her completely. 6 months later, William and Kate received a special invitation that made them both smile with pure happiness. Mrs. Henderson had written a beautiful handwritten letter asking if they would like to attend Tommy's 9th birthday party at her small apartment. She explained that Tommy had been asking about his special royal friends and wanted to show them how strong and healthy he had become. The invitation was particularly meaningful because it represented the complete success of their secret mission. Tommy was not only alive but thriving in ways that exceeded everyone's hopes and expectations. The doctors had declared him completely cured and said he showed no lasting effects from his serious illness. He was attending school regularly and had made many new friends who knew nothing about his previous health problems. Mrs. Henderson had returned to her duties at Kensington Palace, but her work schedule had been adjusted to give her more time with Tommy. The royal household had been understanding about her need to balance her professional responsibilities with her role as Tommy's guardian. William and Kate had quietly ensured that Mrs. Henderson received the support she needed without drawing attention to their involvement. On the day of Tommy's birthday party, William and Kate dressed casually and drove to Mrs. Henderson's neighborhood in Kate's personal car. They brought carefully chosen gifts, including art supplies and science books, that Tommy had mentioned wanting during their previous conversations. They also brought a special cake from the palace kitchens decorated with Tommy's favorite cartoon characters. When they arrived at the apartment building, they could hear laughter and music coming from Mrs. Henderson's flat. Tommy had invited several school friends to his party, and the sound of children playing filled the hallways with joy and energy. William and Kate climbed the familiar stairs, feeling excited about celebrating this milestone in Tommy's young life. Mrs. Henderson opened the door wearing a bright party dress and the biggest smile William and Kate had ever seen on her face. She looked years younger than she had during Tommy's illness, and her eyes sparkled with happiness and contentment. She hugged William and Kate warmly and thanked them again for making this wonderful day possible. The apartment had been decorated with colorful balloons and streamers that created a festive atmosphere throughout the small rooms. Tommy's school friends were playing games in the living room, while Mrs. Henderson had prepared a table full of party food and treats. The scene was exactly what every child's birthday party should be: happy, chaotic, and full of love. Tommy ran to greet William and Kate as soon as he saw them enter the apartment. He looked completely different from the pale, sick child they had met nearly 7 months earlier. His cheeks were rosy with health, and his eyes were bright with intelligence and curiosity. He had grown several inches taller and gained weight that made him look like a normal, active 9-year-old boy. Tommy proudly introduced William and Kate to his school friends as his special royal friends who had helped him when he was sick. The children were impressed and excited to meet real members of the royal family, but Tommy treated William and Kate like beloved family members rather than famous celebrities. His natural comfort with them showed how genuine their friendship had become. Kate joined the children's games while William helped Mrs. Henderson serve food and drinks to the young party guests. Both William and Kate felt completely relaxed and happy as they participated in Tommy's celebration. This was exactly the kind of meaningful personal connection that made their royal duties worthwhile and rewarding. During the party, Tommy showed William and Kate his school reports and artwork that demonstrated his complete recovery and return to normal childhood activities. His teachers had written notes praising his positive attitude and academic progress. Tommy was particularly proud of a science project about the human heart that had earned him top marks in his class. As the party continued, Mrs. Henderson pulled William and Kate aside to share some wonderful news. The anonymous medical fund that had been established to help Tommy was now helping other sick children whose families could not afford proper treatment. Sarah Collins from the medical charity had contacted Mrs. Henderson to report that the fund had already saved the lives of 6 other children over the past few months. William and Kate felt overwhelmed with emotion as they learned their secret mission had created ongoing benefits for many families beyond just Mrs. Henderson and Tommy. The wealthy donors who had contributed to Tommy's treatment had been so impressed with the results that they had continued supporting the medical fund with regular donations. Mrs. Henderson also revealed that she had been volunteering at the children's hospital where Tommy had received his treatment. She spent her free time reading to sick children and supporting families who were going through the same fears and uncertainties she had experienced. Her volunteer work was giving her a sense of purpose and helping her process her own emotions about Tommy's illness. As the birthday party came to an end, William and Kate helped clean up while the school children said goodbye to Tommy. Each child thanked Mrs. Henderson for the wonderful party and promised to see Tommy at school on Monday morning. The normalcy of these childhood friendships represented everything William and Kate had hoped to achieve through their secret mission. Before leaving, William and Kate sat down with Tommy and Mrs. Henderson for a private moment together. Tommy thanked them again for helping him get better and said he understood now that they had done something very special and important for his family. He promised to work hard in school and be kind to other people just like they had been kind to him. Mrs. Henderson's eyes filled with tears of gratitude as she watched Tommy hug William and Kate goodbye. She told them this birthday party was the culmination of a miracle that had begun with their willingness to help someone in desperate need. Tommy's recovery and happiness were gifts that would last forever, and she would never forget what they had done for her family. As William and Kate drove back to Kensington Palace, they felt a deep sense of satisfaction and completion. Their secret mission had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Tommy was healthy and happy while Mrs. Henderson had found new purpose in helping other families. Most importantly, they had learned that true royalty meant using privilege and resources to create positive change in individual lives. The setting sun painted the London sky in brilliant colors as they returned to their palace home. In a few hours, they would resume their official royal duties and public appearances. However, they would always carry the memory of Tommy's birthday party as a reminder of what really mattered in their lives and why they had chosen to dedicate themselves to serving others with love and compassion.